There's a guest book in an abandoned hotel 3 hours from my house. My name is written in it, in my handwriting, dated 11 years before I was ever born. I have a photo of the page. I still haven't shown it to my friends, and I don't think I ever will. Let me back up. My name's not important. Call me whatever. What matters is that 4 of us, me, Dre, Katie, and her boyfriend Marcus, used to do this thing every October. Nothing fancy. We'd pick some half-forgotten place off a 13 creepiest abandoned buildings listicle, drive out, film ourselves being idiots for a few hours, and go home to complain about how our backs hurt from sleeping in a car. It was never real to us. That's the part one need you to understand. We didn't believe in ghosts. We believed in gas station taquitos and bad decisions. This year, it was the Alderwood Grand Hotel, built in 1962, closed in '09 after, depending who you ask, either a fire, a lawsuit, or something the county wouldn't talk about. Take your pick. Small towns love a good rumor more than they love the truth. We got there a little after 9 p.m. October, so already pitch black. Cold enough that our breath fogged when we talked, but not cold enough to be smart about turning back. Dre had the camera. Katie had the flashlights. Marcus had, and I quote, a really bad feeling, but also snacks, which, honestly, summed up the whole night pretty well. I should tell you, I was the one who picked this place. I found it. I was the one who said, come on, it'll be fun, 3 separate times over group chat that week, because things had been rough. I'd just gotten laid off, my apartment lease was falling apart, and doing something stupid and adrenaline-shaped felt like the only free therapy I had left. So when Katie hesitated at the fence line, when she said, guys, maybe not this one, I was the one who climbed over first. Not because I was brave. I just needed one night where I wasn't thinking about my bank account. I think about that a lot now. How the whole thing might not have happened if I'd just stayed home and been depressed like a normal person. The lobby still had furniture in it. That was the first wrong thing, if I'm honest. Not scary wrong, just off wrong. Abandoned buildings are supposed to be gutted. Copper pipes stolen, drywall torn out, spray paint everywhere. This place had a full leather couch. Dusty, sun-bleached on one side, but intact, like someone had just left. And on the front desk, a guest book, leather-bound, edges curled with water damage. Dre thought it'd make a great shot, so he filmed Katie flipping through it while she narrated in her spooky YouTube voice, the one she used ironically, back when irony was still something we had access to. Most of the pages were blank, or blank except for dust. But one page, maybe 40 pages in, had a single fresh signature. Not faded, not smudged, black ink, still slightly glossy like it had been signed that morning. Huh, Katie said. Nothing more. We didn't even write down the name. God, I wish we had. We moved on. You always move on. That's the thing nobody tells you about real fear. It doesn't announce itself. It just leaves a paper cut and lets you keep walking. The elevator was dead, obviously, so we took the stairs to the 2nd floor. That's when the lights started. Not all at once. One at a time, down the hallway, flickering on like something was clicking each switch as it walked past. Except there were no switches. No power. The building had been dark since we arrived. Marcus laughed first, this nervous. Okay, that's not real, right? Laugh. Dre kept filming. I remember thinking, very clearly, this is a great shot. This is going to get so many views. And then immediately feeling sick about thinking that, because some small animal part of my brain was screaming leave, 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 and I was ignoring it for content. We split up on the 2nd floor. Katie and Marcus took the east wing. Me and Dre took the west. In hindsight, and I mean this with my whole chest, that was the single worst decision 4 adults have ever made together, and one of us used to think base jumping was a reasonable hobby. Dre and I were maybe 6 rooms down when we heard it. A door. Slamming. Not a gust of wind slam. A full body. Someone put their shoulder into it slam. From a room just ahead of us. Room 214. We froze. Dre's flashlight beam was shaking. And to be fair, so was my voice when I said, "Did you hear that?" We walked up to 214. The knob wouldn't turn. Locked. From the inside. An abandoned hotel. Locked from the inside. Dre put his ear to the door, and I watched his face change. Not dramatic. Not a scream. Just this small, quiet drop, like his whole body had decided something before his brain caught up. "What?" I said. "Nothing," he said. "Let's just find the others." He never told me what he heard. 11 years of friendship, and he has never once told me. I stopped asking after the third time. He changed the subject with something close to real anger in his voice. We texted Katie. No signal, obviously, because of course there wasn't. Dre tried calling anyway, out of habit more than hope. It rang once, then static. Then, and I need you to sit with this the way I had to sit with it. The static resolved into breathing. Slow, wet, not panicked breathing, not someone winded from running. Patient breathing, like whatever was on the other end had all the time in the world and wanted us to know it. Dre hung up so fast he nearly dropped the phone. We didn't talk for almost a full minute after that. Just walked. Fast, not quite running. The kind of fast where you're negotiating with your own dignity about whether it's time to sprint yet. The smell hit around then, too. I'd been ignoring it, chalking it up to mildew, but it had shifted. Wet pennies. That specific, unmistakable smell you get when you've split your lip and pressed your tongue to it. Except there was no blood anywhere. Just the smell, thick in the air like the building itself was bleeding somewhere behind the walls. We found Katie and Marcus in the east stairwell, and I have never in my life been so relieved to see two idiots holding a flashlight under their chins for the aesthetic. Marcus said he'd gone back down to the car for firewood. We'd planned to build a fire in the parking lot once we were done filming. Another one of those normal, mundane details that makes the whole night feel more real to me now than any ghost did. He came back up a few minutes later, said the front doors had been locked from outside somehow, that he'd had to go around through a broken window. Fine. Weird, but fine. Then we passed a cracked mirror in the second-floor lounge, one of those big old Hollywood gold-framed ones, half fallen off the wall. For exactly 1 second, one single, unbroken second, the kind you don't get to argue yourself out of afterward, there were two Marcuses in that reflection, standing side by side, both looking directly at us. Not at their own reflection, at us. Then it was just Marcus again, asking why we'd all gone quiet, why we were all staring at him like that. Nobody answered him. I don't think any of us could have, even if we'd wanted to. Here's where I have to be honest with you, because half the horror stories you hear online smooth this part over, and I think that's a disservice. We didn't run screaming. We didn't have some big dramatic moment. What happened was quieter and somehow worse. We all just silently, mutually agreed, without saying a single word to each other, that we were leaving right now, and none of us were going to explain why to anyone standing in that hallway, in case saying it out loud made it more real. Have you ever been that scared? The kind where explaining what you saw feels more dangerous than just leaving? We walked to the stairs in a tight cluster, shoulders almost touching, for flashlights cutting in every direction like we were trying to leave no space unlit. Marcus was saying something. I genuinely don't remember what. My ears were doing that ringing thing they do under real adrenaline, and Katie had her hand fisted in the back of my jacket the entire way down, which she has never done before or since, and has never once brought up. I don't blame her. I haven't brought it up either. We passed back through the lobby on our way out, and I don't know what made me do it. Morbid curiosity, or some part of me that needed proof this wasn't just four tired, overstimulated idiots scaring themselves in the dark. I opened the guest book again, flipped to that same page, the fresh signature. I held my flashlight steady on it for 3 full seconds before my brain accepted what my eyes were already telling it. It was my handwriting. Not similar. Not close. Mine. The way I loop my lowercase g's. The way my signature always trails off at the end like I got bored of my own name halfway through. A habit my mother has been correcting since I was 9 years old and never quite succeeded. dated 11 years before I was born. I didn't say anything. I closed the book. I walked out the front doors into the cold October air like a person moving through water, and I have never told any of them what I saw on that page. Not Katie, not Marcus, especially not Dre, who still won't tell me what he heard through door 214, and who I think, honestly, would understand better than anyone why I've kept this to myself. We got in the car. Nobody suggested the campfire anymore. Nobody put music on. We just drove, the four of us, in a silence so complete it had its own weight, until we hit the highway and somebody, I think it was Katie, finally exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since the second floor. We're all still friends. We don't talk about the Alderwood Grand. It's become this unspoken thing between us. This room in the group chat's history that none of us walked back into. If you brought it up at dinner, I think all four of us would suddenly need to check our phones. I moved apartments about 4 months after that night. Not because of anything that happened there, I told myself. Just timing. Just a coincidence. The same way it was a coincidence that I started sleeping with a light on for the first time since I was maybe 7 years old. I don't know what we saw. I've read about mass hysteria, about how fear spreads through a group like a smell you can't unsmell, how for exhausted, adrenaline-soaked people can convince each other of almost anything in the dark. I've told myself that story more times than I can count. Some nights it even works. We got out, all four of us. Every single one of us walked out of that building under our own power, and I've thanked whatever's listening for that every day since. But the guest book still has a name in it. My name, written in my handwriting. And I keep asking myself the same question, over and over, at 3 in the morning when I can't sleep. If that page has been there for 11 years before I was born, who exactly signed it? There's a journal in a cabin somewhere in the Cascades that knows what my best friend is doing right now. Today, this exact hour. I know that sounds insane. I've said it out loud exactly twice. Once to a therapist who wrote something down and changed the subject, and once to you right now. Let me tell you about the night we found it. 4 of us went hiking that weekend. Me, my best friend since sophomore year of college, Emily, plus her boyfriend Ryan, and my coworker Priya, who'd never camped in her life and only came because Emily talked her into it over one too many margaritas. Nothing dramatic planned. 2-night trip, a trail we'd done a version of before, the kind of ordinary weekend that's supposed to be forgettable in the best way. The forecast had said light rain. The forecast was wrong in the specific, aggressive way forecasts get wrong right when you're 8 miles from the trailhead with no cell signal and the sky's already gone the color of a bruise. By the time the storm actually hit, we weren't looking for adventure anymore. We were looking for literally any structure with 4 walls and a roof. I need to tell you something about Emily, because it matters for everything that happens after. Emily's the planner, the one who double-checks the group chat, who brings a first aid kit nobody else remembers to pack, who apologizes for things that aren't her fault out of pure reflex. She'd had a hard year. Her dad had passed in the spring, and this trip was partly her idea, a way of proving to herself she could still do normal, joyful things without falling apart. She was the one who spotted the cabin. Just a shape through the tree-line, graywood going silver-black in the rain, smoke-stained stone chimney. She practically ran for it, laughing, this real, unguarded laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. I remember being so relieved to hear it that I didn't think twice about going in. I think about that a lot now. How the best parts of people are sometimes exactly what leads them somewhere they shouldn't go. The door wasn't locked. Didn't even need forcing, just swung open like it had been waiting for someone to try it. Inside, it was almost suspiciously perfect. Firewood stacked neat by a stone hearth, matches in a tin on the mantel, 2 oil lamps that still had fuel in them, a single wooden table, 2 chairs, and on the table, a leather journal, closed, a pencil resting in the crease of the spine like someone had set it down mid-sentence and meant to come right back. Ryan got the fire going. Priya, ever the planner's opposite, immediately started poking around the shelves for anything interesting. And it was her who picked up the journal, flipped it open out of pure curiosity, and went quiet in a way that made the rest of us stop what we were doing. "This is weird," she said. Just that. She held it out. The handwriting was neat, almost printed. And the entry, dated that day, described, in detail, for hikers caught in a storm, finding shelter in an old cabin. Word for word what had just happened to us. We laughed about it. Genuinely laughed. Must be some kind of local prank, right? Some cabin the rangers stock with a joke journal for exactly this kind of situation. Haha. Very cute. That's the story we told ourselves for about 20 more minutes. Ryan built up the fire while the rest of us peeled off wet layers. And for a while it actually was cozy. The specific, hard-won coziness of being warm and dry after being neither. For friends laughing a little too loud at nothing in particular. The way people do when they're covering for a feeling they haven't named yet. Priya kept flipping through the journal, more out of boredom than anything, reading random passages out loud in a joke-spooky voice. Most of the earlier pages were mundane. Weather notes, something about deer tracks, a grocery list that made no sense in context. Normal cabin logbook stuff, or what passed for it. Then she got to a page about 2/3 through and her voice changed. Not dramatic, just flat. The joke-spooky tone dropped out of it entirely. "Emily," she said, "does this mean anything to you?" The entry was addressed to Emily, by name, describing, in first person, a memory of Emily's father, a memory Emily had told exactly 2 people in her entire life, me being one of them, and I hadn't told a soul. Emily didn't say anything for a long moment, just stared at the page like she was trying to make the words rearrange themselves into something less impossible. That's when the knocking started. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate, spaced a full second apart. The kind of knock a person uses when they want you to know, specifically, that they are choosing to knock rather than simply walk in. Ryan went to the door. Nobody stopped him. I think we all still wanted, badly, for this to be a person. A ranger. A lost hiker. Anyone. He opened it. Rain, wind, black trees. Nobody there. He'd barely gotten the door most of the way shut again when the 4th knock came. From inside the cabin. Behind us. On the wall by the back room door, 3 slow, deliberate raps, identical in rhythm to the ones we'd just heard from outside. Nobody spoke. Priya had gone completely white. I remember my own heartbeat in my ears, that specific underwater thud, and thinking, with total clarity, we are not okay. We need to leave, and we are not going to leave, because it's storming and it's midnight, and where exactly would we go? We didn't sleep. Obviously. We sat close to the fire, all 4 chairs and the 1 bench dragged into a loose circle. Nobody willing to say the thing we were all thinking, which is that leaving a warm cabin to walk 8 miles through a storm in the pitch dark was somehow still the safer option, and none of us could make ourselves choose it. The smell started sometime after that. Faint at first. I told myself it was just the fire, pine sap popping in the flames. But it kept shifting, thickening, until it wasn't pine at all anymore. Wet copper. Thick and mineral. The smell you get in the back of your throat after a hard hit to the nose. Except stronger, and it seemed to be coming specifically from the direction of the back room, the one behind that closed door the 4th knock had come from. Nobody wanted to open that door. I want to be clear about that. At no point that night did any of us decide to be brave about it. We just quietly, collectively agreed, through silence and averted eyes, to keep the fire between us and that door for the rest of the night. Around 3 a.m., Priya tried to find it again. Just to look, she said, just to prove to herself it was an ordinary closet or storage room, and nothing more. She couldn't find it. The wall where the door had been was just wall. Smooth, unbroken, the same weathered wood paneling as the rest of the cabin. No seam, no hinge line, nothing. I need to be honest about what that discovery did to all 4 of us, because I think it matters more than any single scare. We didn't scream. We didn't fall apart dramatically. What happened instead was quieter and, in its own way, worse. A kind of collective numbness. The specific exhaustion of a nervous system that's been running too hot for too many hours and simply runs out of adrenaline to give you. We just sat there, watching the fire, watching each other. Nobody saying the word haunted, because saying it felt like it would make something in that cabin turn its attention more fully toward us. Emily hadn't spoken in almost an hour. When she finally did, it wasn't about the door or the knock or the smell. It was quiet, almost apologetic, the way she apologizes for things that aren't her fault. "It knew about my dad," she said. "Nobody knows that. Not even Ryan." Ryan looked at her like she'd slapped him. Nobody said anything else for a long time after that. At some point, without any of us noticing exactly when, we all drifted into something that wasn't quite sleep, but wasn't full consciousness either. The kind of half state where you can hear the fire and feel time passing, but can't quite make your eyes open. I came out of it because Ryan was shaking Emily's shoulder, and Emily wasn't there to shake. Her sleeping bag was empty, unzipped, pushed to one side, like she'd gotten up calmly rather than been taken. We found her outside, barefoot, standing in the mud, maybe 30 feet from the cabin door, rain soaking through her clothes, facing the tree-line with her back to us. She didn't respond when Ryan called her name. Not the first time, not the second. When he finally reached her and turned her by the shoulder, her eyes were open, unfocused, and it took almost a full minute of Ryan repeating her name before something came back into them. She had no memory of leaving. None. Not the door, not the rain, not walking barefoot across ground littered with rocks and roots without so much as a scratch on her feet, which, when I think about that detail now, more than anything else that night, is somehow the part that unsettles me most. We went back inside because there was nowhere else to go. The journal was open on the table, though none of us remembered leaving it that way. There was a new page. Fresh ink, handwriting identical to before. It described, in present tense, for hikers sitting around a dying fire. One of them just returned from outside, barefoot, confused, while the others watched her with a fear none of them could name out loud. It was describing us. Right then, as it was happening, we left the second there was enough gray light to see the trail. Nobody discussed it. We just started packing, fast, wordless, the specific efficient panic of people who've silently agreed that staying one more hour is not survivable, even if none of us could have told you exactly why. The hike out took less time than it should have. We didn't stop, didn't eat, just walked, Emily between the three of us the entire way, none of us saying it out loud, but all of us making sure she was never more than an arm's length from someone. We told the ranger station what happened, carefully, leaving out the parts that would get us laughed out of the building. They had no record of any cabin at those coordinates. Told us, politely, that there hadn't been an official structure out there in decades. The old hunting cabins in that section of forest had all been demolished or collapsed years before any of us were born. Emily doesn't talk about her dad the way she used to. She still talks about him. She's not avoiding it, not exactly, but there's a carefulness there now, like she's protecting the memory from something, even though none of us can say what. We're still friends, all four of us. We don't do overnight hikes anymore, not together, not since. If it comes up in conversation, somebody changes the subject within about 30 seconds, gently, without anyone having to ask. I looked up those coordinates myself, more than once, on satellite images, at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. There's nothing there. Trees. A slight clearing that could be anything. No structure. No smoke stain on any stone that isn't there to have a stone at all. Sometimes I wonder if the journal's still writing. If somewhere out there, on a page none of us will ever see again, there's an entry describing exactly what I'm doing right now. Sitting here, telling you this story, wondering if I should have left something out. We never went back to check. The journal's still writing, I think. We just don't check it anymore. Someone has to be brave enough to. It's just never going to be one of us. Our Our trip meter says we drove 4 hours that night. My best friend's phone says we were gone for 12. Neither of us can explain the other 8 hours. And neither of us has said the word missing out loud, because if we say it, it's real. I'll just tell you what happened, and you can do the math yourself. Every Labor Day weekend, the four of us do the same trip. Me, my college roommate Sam, his girlfriend Priya, and my cousin Tyler, who only comes because his mom makes him take a real vacation once a year. We drive up to a lake campground about 3 hours north, set up, drink too much, pretend we're 22 again. This year we left later than planned. Priya had a work call run long. Tyler forgot the tent poles at home, and we had to swing back. So it was already dark, maybe 9:40 p.m., by the time we hit the state route that cuts through the forest. Nothing about that road should have been memorable. We'd driven it 4 years running. Same gas station at the halfway mark. Same dead zone for cell service for about 20 minutes. Same joke Tyler makes every single year about how this is where the horror movie starts. This year, none of us laughed when he said it. I don't know why. Something in the air already felt like it was listening. I was driving. I want to own that, because for a long time after, I kept trying to figure out if it was somehow my fault, like there was a turn I was supposed to take and didn't, some choice point I missed because I was tired and arguing with Sam about the radio. Truth is, I'd had a bad month. My dad had just gone into a care facility, and this trip was supposed to be the one weekend I didn't have to think about hospital paperwork. So when the GPS flickered, rerouted, and suggested a road I didn't recognize, I didn't question it. I just wanted to get to the lake and stop thinking for 48 hours. That's the choice. That's the whole hinge this story swings on. I was tired, and I trusted a blue line on a phone screen more than I trusted my own memory of a road I'd driven 4 times. The reroute added maybe 15 minutes, according to the app. Fine. Construction, probably. We didn't think about it. The new road narrowed fast. 2 lanes became 1.5. Trees leaning in close enough that branches occasionally scraped the roof. That particular sound like fingernails dragged slow across a chalkboard. Priya made a joke about it, trying to keep us in. Nobody laughed that time either. About 10 minutes in, we passed a gas station. Small, 1 pump, lit by a single buzzing fluorescent sign that read Pump NGO with the O half burn out. Tyler wanted snacks, so we stopped. The attendant was an older guy, maybe 60s, sitting behind the counter with the local radio station playing low. He rang up Tyler's chips without a word. I remember thinking he seemed tired. Just tired. That was the whole thought I had at the time. It wasn't until we were back in the car that Sam, quietly, almost like he didn't want to say it out loud, went, "Did that guy blink?" Like, the whole time we were in there. We laughed it off. Small towns get weird gas station guys. That's just a fact of American road trips. Right up there with sketchy diner coffee and truck stop bathrooms you don't make eye contact in. The radio started doing something strange around the same time the dead zone should have kicked in. Except this year, instead of static, it locked onto one station and stayed there, playing what I can only describe as a song none of us recognized, Run Backward. Not glitchy backward. Smooth backward, like it had been recorded that way on purpose. Vocals warping into something that almost sounded like words if you leaned in close enough to make yourself hear them. Sam turned it off. The silence after was worse. That's when Priya, scrolling her phone for something to do, went quiet in a specific way. The way people go quiet when they're checking something twice because the first time didn't make sense. "Guys," she said, "what time do your phones say?" Mine said 11:52 p.m. We'd left the house at 9:40. The gas station stop couldn't have taken more than 10 minutes. Even with the detour, we should have been at the lake, unpacking, 40 minutes ago. Nobody had a photo time-stamped in the last 2 hours. Not one. Tyler had been filming out the window for his Instagram the whole drive, a habit that usually annoyed the hell out of us. And every video in his camera roll cut off cleanly at 9:58 p.m. Nothing after, like the phone itself had decided to stop paying attention. I want to be exact about this part because I've replayed it in my head more times than anything else that night. We came around a bend and my headlights swept across the road ahead, and there was someone standing dead center in the lane. Not walking, not waving us down, just standing, facing the car, arms at their sides, in a way that no person waiting for help stands. I hit the brakes so hard Priya's water bottle rolled off the dash. The car skidded, stopped maybe 30 feet short, and the road was empty. Nothing. No one on the shoulder, no one in the tree line that we could see, no sound of footsteps in dead leaves, which, in a forest that dense, at that hour, should have been the loudest thing in the world. I saw them too, Sam said, before I could even ask. His voice had gone very small. I saw them too, so don't tell me I imagined it. Nobody offered to tell him that. We didn't talk for a while after that. Just drove, slower now, all four of us leaning slightly forward like our bodies were trying to see further into the headlights than the headlights could actually reach. The temperature had dropped, not the ordinary drop you get from a car AC, but a specific, heavy cold that seemed to come up from the floor, like the road itself had gotten colder than the air around it. I remember pulling my hoodie sleeves down over my hands without really deciding to. And there was a smell. Faint at first, then not faint at all. Wet, mineral, almost sweet in a way that made my stomach turn before my brain identified why. Tyler said it reminded him of the butcher shop his dad used to take him to as a kid. Nobody asked him to elaborate. Some silences you protect on purpose. We passed a sign. Wooden, hand-carved, the kind small towns put up decades ago and never replace. It read Welcome to Carver, POP 114. Sam's last name is Carver. He didn't say anything for almost a full minute. When he finally spoke, all he said was, "That's not funny," even though none of us had said a word. I need to be honest about the state we were in by this point, because I think that matters more than whatever was or wasn't in those woods. We were exhausted in a way that goes past tired. The kind of exhausted where your own thoughts start to feel like they're arriving from somewhere slightly outside your head. Priya had started quietly repeating the departure time out loud. 9:40, 9:40, 9:40, like saying it enough would anchor us back to a version of the night that made sense. I made the decision to turn around. Not because I had a plan. I didn't. I still don't fully understand what I thought turning around would fix, but because continuing forward felt, for the first time in my adult life, like walking towards something rather than away from it, and every part of my body was screaming that this was the wrong direction to be brave in. I did a 3-point turn on a road barely wide enough for it, trees close enough on both sides that I heard them scrape the mirrors, and we started back the way we came. Except the way back wasn't the way back. We passed our own campsite. I want you to sit with that the way I had to. Not a similar campsite. Not a coincidence of pitched tents in a public campground. Our campsite, the exact clearing we book every year, the one with the crooked pine that leans out over the water. Except it was already set up. Tents already staked. Cooler already out. And already burned. Collapsed into black, still smoking canvas and melted tent poles, like a fire had ripped through it hours before we'd even arrived. Tyler was the one who said what none of us wanted to. "That's my tent. That's the blue one I bought in June." We did not stop the car. The next clear memory I have, and I mean this literally, there's a gap before it I still can't account for, is the four of us on the actual highway, the real one, streetlights overhead, a Denny's sign glowing up ahead like the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my life. None of us have ever agreed on how we got there. We didn't go camping that weekend. We got a motel room 40 minutes from home and none of us slept. Not really. Just lay there in the dark with the TV on for the noise. Nobody willing to say out loud what we were all thinking, which was, what actually happened to those 4 hours. Tyler deleted the video app off his phone a week later. Said he didn't want to see the cutoff timestamp anymore. Priya went to her doctor about it, quietly, and came back saying the doctor mentioned something about dissociative episodes under stress, group hallucination, The kind of clean clinical language that's supposed to make you feel better and somehow makes it worse, because none of us were under that kind of stress. We were going camping. We were supposed to be relaxing. Sam still won't drive that route. Won't even discuss the reroute app suggested that night. Deleted his GPS history from that week entirely, which I only know because I asked him to check something and he told me, flatly, that it was already gone. I looked up Carver, the town on that sign. It doesn't exist. Not on any map. Not in any county record I could find. Not populated by 114 people or by anyone at all. Sam's family has lived in this state for 3 generations. Nobody in his family tree has ever heard the name before that night either. Not until I asked, and his grandmother went quiet on the phone for long enough that he had to ask if she was still there. I still take that highway sometimes, during the day, just to prove to myself it's an ordinary road. It is, in daylight. 2 lanes, some trees, a gas station with a different attendant now. Younger, chattier, no idea what I'm talking about when I ask, carefully, if the old guy still works there. We still do the Labor Day trip. Different lake now. Nobody said out loud why we switched, and nobody's asked. But every year, right around 9:40 p.m., whoever's driving gets quiet. Just for a minute. And I think we all know why, even if none of us has ever said the word. We drove 12 hours to get home that night. The trip meter only logged 4. I've stopped trying to find the missing 8. I stopped a long time ago. What I haven't stopped doing is wondering what was doing them for us. Four of us walked into Pine Hollow Asylum with an EMF meter and a GoPro. 4 of us walked out, but only 3 of us actually went in. I need you to sit with that for a second, because it took me 2 years to be able to say it out loud. Here's what actually happened. I'm not going to pretend we had good reasons for being there. We didn't. Me, Josh, Amara, and Dev had a small paranormal channel. A few thousand subscribers, the kind of channel where success means someone's mom comments on your video. We needed a big one. Something that would actually move the needle. Pine Hollow had been closed since the late 90s. Officially, budget cuts. Unofficially, if you believe the forums, it was a dozen different urban legends stapled together. A fire in the East Wing, a patient who vanished from a locked room, staff who quit overnight and never explained why. We didn't believe any of it. Or, that's not quite true. We didn't want to believe any of it, which isn't the same thing, and I know that now. We went on a Thursday in late October, obviously, because content doesn't schedule itself around good judgment. Dev was the one who found the gap in the fence. Dev was always the one who found the way in, reckless in that specific way where you can tell it's covering for something. He'd just gotten out of a bad breakup, was crashing on Josh's couch, filming stuff like this because it was easier than sitting still with his own thoughts. I got that. I understood that completely, because I was doing the exact same thing for different reasons. Amara was the skeptic, brought a legal pad instead of a spirit box, wrote down explanations for everything as we found them. I liked having her there. It felt like having a seatbelt on. I bring this up because I want you to understand. None of us were the type of people who believed something was actually going to happen. We were the type of people who filmed themselves not believing things, for views. That distinction matters. It's the whole reason none of us were prepared for what we found. We got in through a boarded first-floor window around 11 p.m. Inside smelled exactly like you'd expect. Mildew, standing water, an undertone of old smoke that never fully aired out. Peeling linoleum. A nurse's station with a rotary phone still sitting on the desk, receiver slightly off the hook, like someone had set it down mid-call 30 years ago and never come back for it. Josh had the EMF meter, cheap one, the kind that lights up for microwaves and bad wiring as easily as anything paranormal. It stayed dark and quiet through the lobby, the day room, the first few patient wings. Normal readings. A little disappointing, honestly, and I remember Amara making a joke about how we were going to have to fake something for the thumbnail. Then we hit the east hallway, and it spiked. Not flickered, spiked, All 5 bars, steady, the way it's supposed to when something's actually there rather than when a fluorescent light is dying somewhere behind a wall. Huh, Josh said. Just that. We should have said more. We should have said a lot more. We followed the hallway. It kept spiking, consistent, room after room, like it was tracking something moving alongside us rather than a fixed point in the building. About halfway down, we found an office, records room. Filing cabinets rusted shut except for one drawer that slid open easy, too easy, like it had been opened recently and often. Inside, patient files. Water damaged, mostly illegible. Except one folder, sitting on top, dry. Clean. Typed, not handwritten like the others. Dated that day. That exact date. In October, the same year we were standing there. Amara actually laughed. This short, nervous bark of a laugh, and said, "Okay, that's a good prop. Who planted that?" Except none of us had. None of us had planted anything. We looked at each other for a long few seconds in that dusty flashlight beam, and nobody claimed it. We were already moving toward the exit when Amara, the skeptic, remember, the legal pad girl, stopped and said we should at least review the audio recorder before we left, because if there was something on it, it was the whole video. It was the entire point of coming here. We shouldn't have listened to her. I don't blame her. I'd have made the same call. We huddled around the recorder in the nurse's station, the 4 of us close enough to share body heat in a building that had gone colder than the October night outside should have accounted for. Josh hit play. Under the hiss of empty tape, there was a whisper. Just one word, repeated twice, low and wet sounding, like it was spoken through a mouth that didn't quite work the way mouths are supposed to. A name, not one of our names. A name none of us had said out loud, not once, the entire night. A name that, when I looked it up 2 weeks later out of a compulsion I still can't fully explain, matched a patient who'd been listed as discharged, unaccompanied, from Pine Hollow in 1994. No further records after that. That's when Dev started doing the thing. We were walking back toward the window we'd come in through, and Dev said, "I really don't like this hallway." And then, half a second later, not an echo, not a stutter, a completely separate, fully formed second time, he said it again. Same words, same flat tone, like his mouth had gotten ahead of his own sentence and looped back to finish it twice. Amara asked if he was okay. He said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" And then, half a beat before she'd even started to respond, he said, "Why again?" on his own, unprompted, like he already knew what she was about to ask before she asked it. It happened 3 more times before we reached the window. Each time, Dev seemed a little less aware he was doing it. By the 3rd time, Josh had stopped making eye contact with him entirely, and I understood, without either of us saying anything, that we were both thinking the same unbearable thought, that whatever was in that hallway hadn't stayed in that hallway. There was a cracked mirror bolted to the wall near the exit corridor. Bathroom mirror, the industrial kind, the kind that's more metal than glass. Amara caught our reflections in it as we passed, and, out of habit more than anything, started counting heads. She did this a lot. Legal pad girl, remember? Counting things was how she kept herself calm. She counted 5. 4 of us. Standing there. 5 reflections. I watched her count again, lips moving, finger pointing at each shape in the glass, and I watched her face change in a way I don't have good words for. Not fear exactly. Something closer to the moment right before fear. The split second where your brain is still trying to find an explanation that isn't the obvious one. "There's 5 of us in the mirror," she said. Her voice was completely flat. "There's only 4 of us here." Nobody looked. I want to be honest about that. Nobody turned to look at the mirror themselves. We just grabbed each other, actual physical hands on actual physical sleeves, and we ran the rest of the way to that window, and none of us has ever, not once, in 2 years, described to each other what we each individually think that 5th shape was. Here's the part one still can't make sense of, the part that separates this from every other dumb urban explorer story on the internet. We got out. All four of us physically climbed back out through that boarded window into the cold, real, ordinary October air. I remember all four of us gasping like we'd been holding our breath the entire time, which, functionally, we basically had. But there's a gap between the mirror and the window, maybe 40 feet of hallway. I have no memory of it. None. My last clear memory inside that building is Amara's voice saying, "There's only four of us here." And my next memory is standing in wet grass outside, Dev already vomiting into the tree lean, Josh gripping my arm hard enough to leave bruises I found the next morning and couldn't explain to my roommate. I've asked the others, carefully, over the years. Amara doesn't remember it either. Josh changes the subject every time. Dev doesn't talk about that night at all anymore. Hasn't since about 6 months after, when he moved out of state without much of a goodbye and stopped answering the group chat. The channel never posted that footage. We told our subscribers the SD card corrupted, which, technically, when we checked it, wasn't even a lie. 40 minutes of footage from that hallway onward, gone. Just black, run-length static, 40 solid minutes of nothing. I don't do this anymore. None of us do. Amara went back to just being a normal legal pad-carrying person who happens to know an unsettling amount about EMF meters. Josh got quiet, in general, about a lot of things, not just this. And Dev. I genuinely don't know what happened to Dev. Not really. Not beyond a couple of short texts a year that read like someone checking a box rather than actually reaching out. I think about the mirror more than anything else. Not the wheelchair, not the whisper, not even the missing 40 minutes. The mirror. Because a wheelchair can be an old floor's imagination. A whisper can be bad audio and a tired brain filling gaps. But a head count is a head count. 4 is 4. 5 is not 4. We tell people all four of us made it out. That's true, as far as it goes. All four of us walked out of that building that night, under our own power, breathing, alive. I just don't correct people anymore when they assume that means only four of us walked in. It's easier that way. For all of us.